we're seeing so much of this pop up in the media, because I feel like especially among our generation, media tends to have a negative connotation.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of restoring my faith a little bit that we're projecting the things that need to be projected.
Oh, definitely.
Into the world.
I mean, there are definitely people, especially in my life, who give me faith in humanity. And you guys are definitely some of those people.
Mutual. Absolutely mutual. Yeah.
And that's very important. Whenever you come across like-minded people, keep them in your life.
Cherish
at all
them.
costs. Seriously. Most of us are usually too cool for school on a superficial level, so we never actually get to meet the person below the surface. And it's the coolest thing you'll ever experience in your life. And
on the contrary, sometimes I feel like some of us, until we like find that awakening and break through, it's easy to sort of hide behind a timid front. I know I did that for a long time. And it prevented me from meeting a lot of people like you, because I'd see someone who's creative and be like, I want to be that, and then kind of retreat into myself rather than being like, no, this is what I have to offer, this is what I'm going to bring to the table.
Wow.
And that's where collaboration begins, which is a whole nother
I love collaboration.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
we're collaborating right now, which is pretty dope.
So dope.
So what's going on? What's up? What is new in your creative world?
What is new is that I feel on the precipice of a lot of new beginnings.
Okay.
So I can't really say what's new yet, but I feel a lot of things are going to be born soon.
Oh.
Yeah.
I like
2018 is just coming in. I feel it.
You guys feel that? Like Jen is just vibrating that creative spirit. Do you feel that essence?
Getting it from you though.
That's what I'm here to help you guys. Like everybody. Like we all have that. Remember that. And with Jen, we're gonna discover how she shows it in a multitude of different ways. Coming up. But serious question, what do you think of the camera and the setup? Because
it's amazing.
You're a professional.
It's amazing.
I'm just saying, like
the light itself, having it at this angle is brilliant because you get that nice front lit, no awkward. When it's overhead, you get like bags under your eyes and all those things. And also having it fully what's the word I'm looking for?
Circular?
Surrounding. We'll just go with that. The camera. Just even lighting. Yeah, very, very professional, Josh.
Well, thank you. I wasn't expecting all that, but thanks. So, welcome back, Creative Maestros. We have a very special guest. We have Miss Jen Reitmeier.
Thanks.
I would say in the house, but we're actually in her house. While we were making our vegan pizza, we actually discussed why it's so important to literally everything, and why it's so important to remember that moment before you decide to follow the rest of the world. And for most people, it's usually in their childhood. Like they make a conscious decision to be like, you know what, this path looks okay. I'm gonna see what's down there.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened a little later than childhood for me, but definitely a moment of that kind of realization of the reality of this world is moldable. My reality is moldable through my perception of it.
Well said.
Thank you.
Kind of like Doctor Strange, if you will.
Yes.
So actually,
very relevant.
You actually saw it today, right?
We did for the first time. I was so overdue. But wow, a lot of those concepts very usable in other circles. No, I do think with decision making, a lot of people have different approaches, but I think there is, when you maintain that certain creative headspace, I find with me personally that decision making kind of tends to come a bit more easily. Because I feel like creativity itself encompasses so many other aspects of the world. I think people think of creativity as outside of the box. But in order to transcend the box, you have to know the box.
It's true. So
I think, yeah, that's why I appreciate what you're doing, because you're trying to remind everyone that like we are all creative beings. It's there to be harnessed.
Right.
And yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that, but since you did say it, when did you realize that you had that?
It's funny because, I mean, growing up, I was always a creative little child.
Queen of the stage?
Queen of the stage happened much later because I didn't have the confidence until I was, gosh, I mean, I really had my big realization moment at 19.
Okay.
Which, for what I do, is kind of old. Compared, I mean, but I'm grateful for my time of sort of discovering, because like I guess just the suburbs I grew up in, it's like I never really thought of creativity being my primary source of living, surviving, thriving, if you will. It always seemed like that was my extracurricular activities.
That's very interesting. Okay.
It felt compartmentalized from the rest of my life. And it wasn't until I struggled for like 3 semesters at business school, and my soul just felt so
Trapped?
stale.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm not saying like, I think there are people that can thrive and bring their creativity to the business world. I just think for myself personally, it wasn't my outlet.
Correct.
And it took me sort of that harsh realization to get the freedom and the bravery to sort of fling myself into an entirely different lifestyle than I'd ever been around growing up.
So going from then till now, could you describe your current lifestyle in NYC?
It's pretty tumultuous.
Wonderful word.
But in the most beautiful way. It's just having that freedom where like my life is very malleable in many ways. My schedule and my hobbies, I don't know, they just all kind of exist and happen at my will, in a sense.
Word, okay.
I like that I'm not confined to a set 9 to 5, Monday through Friday schedule. That's very helpful for me as a human. I know some people enjoy that structure. But yeah, for me, it's, I think also just being surrounded by so many types of human beings. I mean, there's 9 to 10 million people in New York City. And,
exactly.
I mean, in my neighborhood alone, I feel like the greater area I would call my neighborhood probably has 1 million. And it's just that thing of, I think I feel very stimulated by the humanity of seeing all these types of people, all these walks of life, coexisting, cohabitating.
That's the lure of the city, right?
It really is. It really is. And that, for me, that like drives my creativity, because I see all these different lifestyle choices, all these, I mean, outlets for what you could call creative energy. And when they intertwine, and just like seeing all this collaboration just sparks me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it seems like being able to go into yourself in the suburbs has allowed you to flourish even more so in the city.
Yes.
Wow.
I think my time in the suburbs to, sometimes it takes going the wrong way to be like, oh no, I have to turn around and go this path instead.
I mean, that is the story of an artist, right?
Yeah.
We have trash bins full of of things that didn't work out. Or for inventors, you have failed inventions until you strike the match.
Until it, mm-hmm. Or even things that you enjoy doing, but you're like, this isn't my full calling, but I'm getting there. Sometimes I think it takes diving into those universes, if you will.
Absolutely, and that's,
find your way.
I'm sure you can tell from the energy, just in general. Like, that's probably my favorite thing in the world, is to help people find their calling. It's kind of like a lightsaber calling out to you, like, yes, come here. And then it just
you are a Jedi Master in that sense of like,
or a Jedi Sith, if you will.
If you will, if you may,
Mademoiselle. So, Stage Maestro, what was it like performing in the Macy Day Thanksgiving Day Parade?
It was invigorating. It was very surreal. Kind of in the moment, it didn't feel, I was like, okay, I'm standing on 34th Street, Herald Square. Been here 1 million times. But in hindsight, Well, that's a lie. I mean, I got such a rush when they counted down because we were the first ones, like we were live.
Oh.
So it was that flip from like the intro video to being live. So you literally hear the producers like counting you down, and then they drop the curtain like over the camera onto us. So that was pretty, yeah, adrenaline for sure.
Wow.
Which is one of the reasons I love the creative process so much, because I mean, I'm an adrenaline junkie in other ways, but nothing quite does it for me like performing.
And you got to collaborate with 2 Emmy-winning choreographers. What was that like?
Pretty cool. It was very fast and furious. I mean, we had really a rehearsal and a half, I'd say. But like everyone was just very professional atmosphere. Expected to come, prepared, knowing your choreography ahead of time.
So what I appreciate the most about the thespian community is that you guys completely know who you are, because in order to portray someone else, you have to know who you are, or you're going to get lost in that person.
What I'll kind of say in a bit of an adverse comment to that, though, is while I do feel like I know who I am, I feel like I find bits of myself in the characters I portray.
Which is even cooler, right?
Right. Like
Yeah.
with every character I get to take on, I grow a little bit. And it's just that study, and there's sort of a humanity quality to doing that, because you really have to be able to sort of psychologically set yourself aside and step into someone else's shoes. And that's such a healing thing.
Wow, okay.
Because it's like, okay, maybe Jen wouldn't do this, but what would this character do? And like, how do I find a thought process so I can make that real? Because if I'm being, especially with stage acting, I mean, there's just such an emphasis on the continuity of the storyline, because like you're not taking takes, you're going straight through your show.
Correct. I mean,
and so I feel like it's definitely a different thing than TV and film, but like when you're on stage living that storyline from start to end, you have to be in that character and committed to their universe. So for me, that's been, it's incredible. It's the closest thing we have in this lifetime to really being in another person's shoes.
It's true, and you guys master that. Like, it sounds like a lot of fun, and because
it's work, but it's so worth it.
Right. And like, how cool is that? And you're doing what you love to do.
Yeah. One of my favorite things that all of my teachers from college would say is that, I mean, you have to do the work, but then once you do the work and you have it so ingrained in your body and your mind and soul, and then they're like, throw it away. Like, now just like you've done the work, you've put yourself in this character's shoes, you're in this universe, now throw it away and just play.
Just be the character.
And like that's when you let your creativity flow. It's sometimes also, I think people think that creativity means not that it means lack of work, but I think sometimes people who are from a more logical, structured side of thinking, they but I've experienced times where people think creativity is just like play or fun, and like it is, but there's so much more to it than that.
It's an art. So
it's an art.
You gotta be a scientific artist.
Scientific artist, yes, Josh, yes. You coined that term perfectly because work meets play.
And then by doing this, which you already love, you get to unlock other parts of yourself. So these characters that you speak of portraying, because obviously they're designed to have bits of all of us inside them already.
Right.
But you actually get to, like you said, put the shoes on of that person. You get to breathe like that person and get to think about and see the world like that person.
That's what I love about performing, especially with musical theater, because you're already stepping into that character in the sense of like, how do they move, how do they think, how do they feel, how do they laugh, how do they move about in space, like what nuances do they have. And then when you get, I think just because I was a musician first too, like when you get music involved in that too, and you think about how does this character sing.
Right, like
it's an amazing opportunity to have, to be able to create in that sense, because it's just
I love that you said that word opportunity. Like,
It
every
really
opportunity is a moment to create, but especially on stage.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you're doing a show and you have to do multiple shows a week, and it's how do I keep this new and fun and creative and fresh? And if you want to think about it from a sort of like Rick and Morty perspective, I'm going there. If you were to replay this universe over and over again, it's like, okay, maybe on this day this character would have reacted slightly differently. So like each moment you have on stage really just have to be fresh. It's like, and that's that thing again of once you do the work, you can throw it away because you know I've absorbed this character so much I can step into their world every single day and live that day the way Jen would, and like not every one of my days is the same. So
that's really cool because over this last month of December, when we first launched our YouTube channel, we have a Maestro of the month, and this month it was Nikola Tesla.
Yeah.
So basically,
he is.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Was, but is.
Yeah, right. Still is. His work
Was
still lives. And he was able, and I was able to basically study him, and then I would start thinking like him, and then I would start making discoveries in the same manner that he did, simply by thinking like he did. And I feel like that's one of the coolest part about being an actor is that you get to do that. Like, you're portraying some of these amazing people, and a lot of them actually stays with you after the production is over.
Oh my gosh, there is such a thing as post-show depression, because
Really?
when you have to leave that character, it's like I have found such a place for you in my heart, and when it's time to part ways, I mean, it really is like disbanding a relationship in a sense. It's
So you guys have to like break up basically.
kind of. I mean, when I'm really emotionally attached to a character, like it's even just in college doing scenes, but just like from one scene, like sometimes you just get so invested in a character, and it's. But that's the beauty of it, is you learn from those characters, and like even though they're fictional people, you put the life into them to teach yourself lessons.
Right.
Sort of.
And I mean, after a while, when you're going over the character's thoughts in your head, you're still having a conversation with that character and yourself.
Precisely.
So you're still meeting tons of people, even in your endeavor into your passion.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
And it's not only your perception of the character, but like when you think about when you're seeing through the character's eyes, the other characters in that story, it's like, well, how does my not what do I think of these other characters, but how does my character perceive them due to their paths crossing and relationships and etc. So it really is just that added perspective of like compounding, like I'm in my character's lens, therefore how do I see other people? And that can be, if you do the reverse psychology of that, it can be reflective to be like, how does that character perceive my character then? And that it's just so informative of the dynamic of relationships.
Right. So then, what type of character would challenge you the most as not only a person, but an actor?
Okay, I'm going to answer this question in a non-realistic sense.
Okay.
If I were to be cast as a cisgendered male, like just the farthest from me would be the most challenging, I think. Someone who did not share the same liberal views I do, someone who just exactly my polar opposite, I guess. But that's like, so let's say one of my favorite teachers in college, Larry, if you see this, I doubt he will.
You can send it to him.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Larry. He always talked about, like, you have to be a lawyer and be able to advocate for your characters. Like, let's say you have to play, he always used the example of, if you have to play a serial killer. Like, dear God, like, obviously my logical mind would never go to those extremes, but it takes that creative force of empathy to be able to say, like, how could you honestly and truly portray a serial killer? Like, because you cannot judge your character that you're portraying, because if you're judging them, you're not in their perception.
What do you go through, or what do you have to go to in order to become that character? But before we answer that, I'm going to let you meditate on that before we get to that.
Pressure.
What current actor or performer inspires you the most in terms of like really delving into a character, like
Ooh.
mind, body, and soul?
I'm gonna go with probably the most predictable and slightly cliche answer, but as we discussed earlier today off camera, cliches are the purest form of truth, so no shame in my answer. Meryl Streep.
Okay.
Just
Jersey though, by the way. Hey.
Jersey strong. She just, over the decades, has stepped into so many incredible characters. Not all of them likable. One of the most iconic for me is Devil Wears Prada.
Okay.
Just the way she's able to enter that movie and you just see her character and just the most vile woman, but then by the end she brings such a softness to such a strong, harsh, like cold person. Well, like from how we first perceive her, and then by the end of the movie that the audience has such compassion for such a role, especially in a overall quite lighthearted film. To bring that depth is just, she's the cat's pajamas for me.
She brings it, right?
She just, whew, nothing like Meryl. Yeah.
So if you had to examine the way she does it, in your imagination, how do you think she does it?
In my imagination, I really don't, I don't think I can answer that question the way I think you want me to.
Well,
No, just because just every artist really does have their different avenue.
Absolutely.
And I know even below that, it's like within your own avenue, you have different ways into each character. So I know for me personally, it really depends on the character.
Okay.
What sparks me, but I really think, I have to say, for someone to have that level of mastery, I just know it has to be coming from a place of empathy.
Ooh, that's very powerful. So, segue into that, how do you connect with your characters?
Again, it really depends on the character, but one of the starting points, again, taught in school, was that we used to make lists of what our characters said. That was one list of what things our character says about other people.
Okay.
Things other people say about our character. And then, like, undeniable facts about the character that are stated in the play, like concrete facts, not opinions, etc. But it really was eye-opening to be, again, just like in this universe, like my character says this is how they view themselves. This is how they view these people in their lives. This is how other people think of them based on what they've said. And coming from that place is just so informative. And then beyond that, from those ideas, I've always been a person that thinks less in language and more in a sense of energy and environment and vibes. So then from there, depending on like the era, I'll be like, okay, in this decade, what type of music do I think this character listens to? Based on their, whatever the playwright gives you, based on like stature, or again, how they speak about themselves tells you about their confidence. Therefore, like, how do I think they walk in this world? How do they move? And again, the dynamic between other characters too. How, in this scene, since this character said this about my character, they think blank about me. So how do I think that makes me feel, and how do I think this character would then act in front of this person? Because again, we are, as human beings, we're completely dynamic creatures. I mean, when we're in front of different people, we act different ways and in different circumstances. And you have to think about that as the character. You can't just play one general entity the whole time. So I think the magic really is in picking up on humanity.
Right.
And like how people are. So again, I just think of, what does Jen as a person like, and what does that say about me? So what can I bring to this character that I can relate to? And for me, that's always been, again, music, movement as a dancer, movement through space, even walking is so informative to me, that just that physical feeling of how you carry yourself. And then also even thinking of books they might read, or just little finite things. It's just incredible how solidifying little details can really build a concrete universe in your mind.
It's so cool.
And once you build that for yourself, you give yourself the freedom to just play because you know what that space looks and feels like. So then you can turn off the thinking and go into autopilot and be like, okay, in this space I've created, now I can just go and play and exist.
Absolutely.
Because that's what human beings do. We just exist. And characters are human beings.
From observing and then playing.
Yes.
Like a scientific artist.
Science is art.
Exactly.
And art is science.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think Nikola Tesla kind of merged the two worlds perfectly. So as a stage maestro and performer of sorts.
TM. Again.
Yeah, right? Seriously. I feel like your natural function is obviously discovering yourself, but also collaboration. Like you're collaborating with tons of people. You're collaborating with other actors. You're collaborating with the producers, the director, the audio and visual, and the lighting.
Yeah.
Like, it's a production.
A lot of energies.
What is it like behind the scenes, like, in terms of, because essentially you're collaborating on the spot every night.
That's what I loved about my college. It was collaborative arts project of the 21st century. Like that's the full length name, Cap 21. But just that intertwining of energy, and there's something so sacred about creating such a safe space that like so many people can jump in on and feel free to share their creative source. And just seeing how, because like as one human being, you have so much capability and creativity to put into the world. And if you want to think of it sort of as a Doctor Strange type thing, when like we're all doing this and like creating these, when they come together and make a force field, just seeing how the little spark of inspiration you put in the world, someone can come along and add this to it, and then it's literally that tumbleweed snowball effect of just accumulating inspiration and channeling that creativity.
Yeah, inspiration is a
it's
seed.
just, it's the most beautiful thing for me. Sharing, like, it's really just a sacred space of being able to share that, artist to artist, human to human. Yeah.
Inspiration is definitely a seed, and that's one of the things that we're here to do, is to inspire you with amazing creative souls like Reitmeier.com over here.
And like Joshua Waring.
JoshWaring.com, actually.
Oh, it's a thing.
It is.
I'm gonna put a link on my homepage. But yeah, collaboration just like this, I think is one of the most inspiring things for me. I don't like to exist as a solo artist. I mean, there's power in that for sure, in self-identity, but I think it's even more remarkable and beautiful when you're able to put that self-identity and say, hey, humanity, what do you have to add to this?
Right?
And it's just that coming together is just so empowering. I'll also say throughout the creative process, I had the, again, opportunity to be in like a couple new works throughout my education process. And just developing a show from the ground up, you really see that creative process of, what do you think about this? And what do you think about this? And just seeing it evolve. It's literally like putting a baby into the universe.
Wow.
Like
So,
you're giving birth as a community, and it's just beautiful.
so what's the first things that need to be handled when creating a production like that?
Oh,
You're the EP.
it's again, it's varied with every production I've done in that style.
So that's why it's so fascinating, because every project is different.
It's so different depending on the people in the room and the content.
Okay.
I mean, much like I was saying with characters, how I have a different way into different characters, I think the same can be said for artistic works. It's like there's not one process that's going to work for you at one time, and I think that's why, as a creative individuals that like every single human on earth is, it's so important that we just listen to ourselves and listen to that source tell us what our next step is.
So like,
It really is that intuitive flow.
absolutely, and we were talking about intuition earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So
Intuition is key.
It is definitely key. Always listen to yourself, especially your creative self. So I'm just curious, as I'm sure other creative maestros are curious out there, what if you, as a performer, you come across a writer that you don't mesh with? Do you have that creative liberty to, you know, basically create what you want, or do you have to like stay in that, not necessarily that box, but in that range?
So yeah, in most cases, if there's a writer you don't mesh with, it will have already been a published work. So like you kind of have what you have.
Okay.
98 times out of 100, like. But that being said, I think there's almost a beauty in that, in the sense that this writer is giving me this, and maybe I don't mesh with it, but that's an opportunity for growth.
Right.
And you have to say, how do I bridge this gap? I mean, like, you'll have a director there, which is, again, another beautiful form of collaboration, where they'll say, hey, what if you think about it like this? And it's just having all these different perspectives thrown in, you as the actor. I mean, depending on your director, get to kind of choose at the end of the day what resonates for you. But again, it's just creativity within creativity at that point. It's kind of an inception moment.
I love that film.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I'm a huge fan of screenwriting and directing. What kind of energy do you need for your best performance from a storyteller and a director?
Oh man. Again, I'm just going to preface this with saying that it really, I think it varies artist to artist, but
Sure.
Me personally, I really appreciate from a writer someone who gives sort of, you don't just see the outside perspective of the character, but someone who you can just, even if it's on an intuitive level, pick up on the current of the inner essence of the character.
Right.
And I think that's not even dependent on the writer necessarily. I think it is a connection-based thing. Like, we've all had books and things, I'm like, I relate to this character. This is someone I resonate with and want to learn from. Could easily step into their shoes. But then on the director's end, I know some of my favorite directors that I've gotten to work with have always been very hands-on and energetic.
Okay.
And receptive to communication with the actor. I think that's a big thing, is a good director really knows that, yes, the actor is an artist and it's their take on the character, but at the end of the day, it's the director who has the vision for the big picture.
Right.
So I think it takes a special person to say, this is my big picture, but how do you, as this character, fit into my big picture in a way that you are inspired to bring in? Like, again, bringing back that collaboration.
So like
it's just so
the
important.
metaphor you said earlier, like a composer, like a director is basically a composer of a motion
They really
picture.
conducting that.
So I'm actually
weaving that web.
I'm even more curious now. What keeps a director from micromanaging? Because I'm thinking about it from the other side, like the logical side of the brain. Even though I love to be in the intuitive, like that's where I live. But I'm thinking about, okay, practically, like how, because people are people at the end of the day. How do you keep from micromanaging an actor or a whole team?
I've never had the chance yet to really formally direct. I've done very minor things, but
more
so
professional to come, yeah.
Well, one day. I'm just, again, prefacing this with the fact that I'm speaking from the actor's standpoint, but I just know my favorite director I've ever worked with was for my industry showcase, which was the end of my collegiate experience. And he was just so wonderful in the sense of I don't know how to word it. He just really had a sense of talking to the actor as the human. And it's sort of that love language of being able to hear each other's sides of the thing. Like, I, as the actor stepping into the character's shoes, will say, I think my character is this, this, and this. But the director can be like, hey, but my perception from the big picture of how the character fits in this puzzle is this, and then it's finding that medium of, I perceive this as the character, but the world of the show perceives this. Like, how do we meet?
Okay.
Yeah. I wish I had a more concrete answer for you, but again, it's so dependent on
No, it makes sense because
circumstance.
it's literally a variable.
Yeah, everything.
So you kind of have to maneuver with it, which that makes it even more fun.
It's so fun because especially in the world of theater, it's like you could argue that maybe the script is a fixed variable,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not even truly that fixed because it's like, yes, you have words on a page, but the beauty, I think, of live theater is that you're working with dialogue.
Absolutely.
And human beings, like, we communicate on so many levels. The script can say hi, but it's like, how do you say hi?
Right. I
could be like, hi, Josh. I could be like, hi, Josh.
Exactly. How many ways could
Hi,
you say
Josh.
hi or wow?
It's so indicative of subtext. And that's the juiciest thing, I think, as a performer is, what am I really saying?
Right.
What am I really saying? I'm speaking words, but what am I conveying?
And what aren't you conveying on purpose?
Or
by accident.
Yes.
And by accident,
Yes.
you might even convey it. So yeah.
Precisely.
There's so many different levels.
So it's you're literally creating a reality.
Which
Right?
is essentially what you do with your imagination anyway.
Exactly.
Like, if you really want to think about this in this metaphor, your imagination is its own dimension, and you have the ability, the superpower, to bring it to life. That's probably one of my favorite metaphors for imagination.
That's a good one. Very good one.
Yeah, it'll be in the book actually.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people are curious. I'm definitely curious. What was the most challenging role you ever had to take on?
I think this is gonna have to be a 2-part answer. So
Okay, that's fair.
apologize in advance for the.
Hey, you're answering your way. It doesn't have to be one answer. Yeah.
Initially, like, what came to mind was I played Sheila in The Boys Next Door for just a scene. I shouldn't say just a scene, but a scene in college for a grade. And she's a woman with Down syndrome.
Really?
And it's supposed to be a dramedy, like serious moments, but still very lighthearted, funny at times. So that in itself was just like, wow, how do I, if I'm supposed to be funny within a scene where I'm playing someone with a genuine condition,
Yeah.
I, of course, like, as a human, I'm like, I would never want to offend anyone, so I'm like, this humor has to come from a place of absolutely no ignorance, no just negativity. So first things first, I studied and, like, watched videos of people with Down syndrome, and not just to observe their physical mannerisms and how they behave, but one of the biggest things I learned from the research I did was just, they're some of the most loving people.
Right? And they have great senses of humor.
Oh my gosh.
So, full disclosure, I went to Newtown Friends School. Shout out to all my NFS fans out there in Newtown. So, we actually had this amazing program with Wood Services, which is not down the street, but close to here.
Yeah.
And we got to interact with some of the most amazing souls on the planet. And it was awesome. And we played
So
basketball
loving.
with them and
Yeah.
against them, and they would tell us jokes. They'd be like, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was just really eye-opening for me in that sense, but I think, and just also playing, like, a grown adult
Right.
who's semi-independent with that condition. Yeah, just wow. It really also was informative for me as an actor to be like, this is a level of research I should be doing on every character.
Word, okay.
Just to fully understand, and just, again, yet another lesson in compassion. And
Empathy, too, right?
yeah. Without, like, empathy without, it's not, the difference in empathy and pity is so great.
Oh.
And it's, yeah, it was just really empowering to be able to feel like I did that character, that woman, justice, you know? But I will say, I think the role that might have been even harder than that was...
Harder than that?
in this, okay, I played Mrs. Lovett in Sweeney Todd.
Okay.
Again, for a scene in college, but that's still, you hear one scene and you're like, how much work can that be? But it's like, no, I need to do the same amount of character work as I would do if I was doing the full production.
Right.
And so this is, for those of you who don't know Sweeney Todd is a barber who kills people.
He's like the Jack Ripper.
Jack the Ripper, but
yeah,
under the guise of, it's a long, convoluted story, but Mrs. Lovett's desperately in love with him, and so she is known as the worst baker in London. The worst pies in London is a song of hers.
Wow.
But, so within that, she's just so desperate to be by his side that she's like, I'm literally going to take these dead bodies and bake them into my pies. Well, it takes place in, like, completely poor London.
London, yeah.
Just gritty times. Not that it justifies anything, but just to step into the shoes of someone without a condition, someone whose society would perceive as fully functioning.
But also, what society, what time period as well.
Exactly. Well, oh gosh, I don't remember now, but I want to say...
Is it Victorian, like original Sherlock Holmes?
Turn of the 1800s to 1900s, I want to say.
Okay.
I'm sure theater people will correct me on here. But,
right.
Yeah, so not only the lack of feminist times, like a woman was really left to... She didn't have a father figure to support her. She was looking for a husband, and Mrs. Lovett was, like, on her own, running a pie shop. Like, somehow she had such blind love for a man that she validated putting dead people's bodies in them, not only to save her side of things business-wise, but to cover him and, like, keep his secret. And it's just, it's so dark and twisted, but she's also such a fun-loving creature when you get to play her on stage, and finding the humor in such a dark story, again, just empowering being able to do that.
I mean, that's a commitment to always see the positive in everything too, right? To be able to do that.
Yeah, especially being a woman in the 21st century. I mean, and a feminist, I would never even consider doing just about anything for the sake of appeasing a man, let alone murder. Like, straight up murder. But I had to be able to let go of my thoughts and say she really just loved him that much.
Wow.
And it's just so powerful. Yeah.
It sounds like it.
Intense.
So what do you do to prevent yourself from fully... Because we were actually talking about our admiration for, especially mine, for Heath Ledger and what he did with The Dark Knight and what he did with the Joker. Like, what do you do to prevent yourself from going over the edge in terms of really adapting that character into this reality?
I think what helps for me, the way you, like with the human voice, you warm up and then you sing, and then good singers, like you cool down after singing. You cool the vocal folds down.
Okay.
So I try to do the same with my acting and with my characters. It's like I do warm-ups, and I'll get a studio and just, like, again, move about the room and move through space as my character. Even, like, putting on items of clothing that I'm like, oh, this character would appreciate this and the way this makes them feel.
I gotcha, okay.
So I think it's also important after that to do something to dip your toes back into your own reality. Cool down in the sense of step out. You can't just, like, end a show, end a scene, and be...
And just take your clothes off and now, oh, I'm Jen again, right?
I mean, I'm sure when you're doing, like, if you're on Broadway and you're doing the same show for a year, you get that down and you're like, okay, I can snap out of it. But especially with new characters, especially something that takes so much emotional investment, I do think it's important to take care of yourself after. And even from a standpoint of celebrating you for, like, going there and being that creative human and, like, you go, like, go Jen, I'm gonna do something that I like as a human to remind me, okay, now I'm back and I'm here.
That's pretty cool. And before we were talking about spirit animals, does connecting with your spirit animal help you get back to who you are?
I don't think I've ever thought of that, but that's something I'm excited to think about.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think it even has to be spirit animal necessarily, but definitely like those sort of essence pockets of identity for sure help. I mean, I know something I love as a human being, I have a specific lavender bubble bath that I use. So that's always a treat for me when I do something really creatively challenging and takes a lot of endurance.
Okay.
That's one of my ways to unwind personally. Glass of wine, just things that you identify with.
And
put on Harry Potter. Like,
oh yeah, definitely Harry Potter. Oh yes.
Just, you know, I mean, when you're really playing with meddling with different realities, I think it's important to
have your totem like in Inception.
Yeah, your totem.
Right. Gotta bring you back to this reality.
Really though.
But exploring your imagination is totally worth it. It's totally worth the experience.
So worth it. So worth it. It's an adventure every time.
So, Jennifer, Reitmeier.com, thank you for joining us for our creative interview series, even though we're in your house. But thank you for the hospitality. So,
it's a pleasure.
Before we sign off, is there one piece of advice you would love to give to other people like yourself who are have that creative spirit just begging to come out?
Again, to go back to Doctor Strange, one of the biggest things they talk about in that film is surrendering. Ooh. And I think the biggest thing you can do for yourself is just, without judgment, without pressure, without expectation, whatever creative outlet is calling to you, whether it's writing, dancing, singing, acting, etc., painting, drawing, just clearing your head and your thoughts and letting yourself exist and surrender to whatever art form of your choice and just see what comes out of you. I really think it's sort of a kind of a moment of channeling that happens where you just open all of this and let yourself create without putting the brakes on or putting any pressure on it.
No boundaries.
Just as if you're a 5-year-old playing again, like finger painting.
Right.
That sense of freedom.
In the sandbox, like literally the world is your canvas. Just go for it.
It really is. Yeah.
So thank you for joining us and happy holidays, guys.
Happy holidays.
So I hope I'm not the only one who does that, who just breaks out into random laughter. Am
No.
I the only one who does that?
No. That being said, there are not enough people that do that, but you're not the only one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You guys should really try it. It's a lot of fun. I mean,
just laugh.
Yeah.
Just let go and laugh. He enables me. Or
do you enable yourself?
Oh, touche. Oh. Well, I guess inadvertently we all enable ourselves because we are each other.
It's true. I mean, but the world is always full of distractions.
Oh, correct.
And at the end of the day, your power to decide, your willpower, that you can do, make any decision you want.
Oh, always.
It's true. You can't do that. And it can't actually, since E's right there, it actually reminds me of Entourage. And when they, they start to make the movie Medellin.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to go to Colombia, and Billy Walsh says to Vince, like, I want to make you the most crazy antagonist ever.
Yeah.
But I still want people to love you and cry at your funeral.
It's like Snape. To go back to your favorite.
Okay.
HP.
Serious question. Do you guys think, I feel like I can see this. Do you think Adam Driver, he's the guy who plays Kylo Ren, could he not play a young Snape?
Oh, he could
For sure.
He'd be fantastic.
He would be great. He already has the mood. Like, he's right there.
He's one of the most striking
J.K.
characters
Rowling.
and able to portray such a
Looking at
deep
you.
level of a character. Like, as soon as he's on the screen, I'm immediately drawn to him. It's like, yo, this guy is so BA.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a stage master, a stage maestro, which you are.
Stage Maestro.
I actually like that.
I like that too. I might steal that from my website.
Yeah, seriously. Which is JenReitmeier.com. Make sure you check it out.
Jennifer.
Is it?
She keeps it.
Classy.
She keeps it full like.
So she's no longer Jenny from the block, Jennifer.
No, I'm still Jenny from the block, but
Okay.
Jennifer.
All right. So JenniferReitmeier.com. We will have a link in the description below.
Ooh.